Part 54, Holy Dynasty captured the capital of the nomadic dynasty in one fell swoop. Mo Yan on the city wall saw that his morale was high. He hurried down the city tower, rode his horse, and shouted to the 180,000 cavalries who had been waiting for a long time, "All attack! Take over the base camp of the nomadic dynasty! Take the base camp of the nomadic dynasty! The base camp of the nomadic dynasty! The base camp of the nomadic dynasty!" The soldiers shouted with weapons in their hands. The remaining nomadic cavalry, under the fierce pursuit of the Holy Dynasty cavalry, shrunk from 2,000 to only a few hundred. They watched as their troops were lighting fires and preparing for lunch, and shouted at the top of their voices, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" Unfortunately, the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty had long been accustomed to their victories. Only the soldiers guarding the watchtower saw that the situation was not right, and hurried down the watchtower and ran towards the yurt of the military advisor. It is a pity that the watchtower is too far from the yurt of the military advisor. When the military advisor learned that the Holy Dynasty cavalry had been killed, he hurriedly ran out of his yurt. Looking at the over 10,000 Holy Dynasty cavalry in the dark, a cold air rushed to the top of his head from the soles of his feet. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Seeing that his soldiers were all stunned, Bai Ga-tel was so angry that his eyes were splitting. Only then did the military advisor notice the fleeing Bai Ga-tel. His eyes were red with anger and his mouth was fragrant. "You idiot! How did you lead the enemy to our resting place?" He was about to be killed by Bai Ga-tel was so mad that he was stupid enough to lead the enemy to their camp. He glanced at Bai Ga-tel fiercely, and shouted to the soldiers behind him, "Fight against the enemy." Suddenly, a feathered arrow flew over and shot accurately on the military division's chest. Bai Ga-tel turned around and happened to see a feather arrow mercilessly pierced through the chest of the military advisor, and was so frightened that he almost fell off the horse's back. The military advisor wanted to pull out the arrow from his chest, but just as he raised a hand, another feathered arrow flew and shot through his neck with precision and accuracy. His raised hand just froze in place, and then he fell down with an unwilling face. "Master military advisor is dead. Master military advisor is dead." A soldier who was close to him shouted in fear. The already panicked nomadic dynasty cavalry became even more panicked when they heard that their main military advisor was dead. They mounted their horses and hurriedly met the enemy. The cavalry of the Holy Dynasty learned that the military advisors of the nomadic dynasty were dead, and they rushed into the enemy camp excitedly, as if they were beaten with blood, and arbitrarily harvested the enemy's life. Before the arrival of the more than 100,000 cavalries led by Mo Yan, the more than 10,000 cavalries of the nomadic dynasty were killed by the cavalry of the Holy Dynasty, throwing away their helmets and armor, and ran into the depths of the grassland. Lieutenant General Lu knew that they were heading for the base camp, so he greeted the remaining cavalry and followed behind them. The cavalry of the nomadic dynasty was really frightened by the cavalry of the Holy Dynasty, and the remaining 7,000 or 8,000 cavalries rushed to their base camp. From time to time, Bai Ga-tel looked back and glanced at the cavalry in the back, where there were only more than 10,000 cavalry's men. Thinking that there were nearly 90,000 cavalry's soldiers on his side, he felt more at ease to lead the enemy to his base camp. If he knew that there were more than 100,000 cavalries behind him, what kind of wonderful expression would he have on his face? The base camp of the nomadic dynasty was in a plain deep in the grassland, and 100,000 tents stood in the grassland, which was extremely spectacular. In the middle and the largest felt tent, the envoy of the Jinghe kingdom was discussing with the king of the nomadic dynasty to form an alliance against the Holy Dynasty. Your Majesty, as long as our two countries join forces, we will definitely be able to easily conquer the entire Holy Dynasty. The envoy of the Jinghe kingdom looked serious. When the time comes, as long as we capture the Holy Dynasty, the territory of our two countries will be divided into half. Haha, I'm full. Can you hold it? The king of the nomadic dynasty showed a trace of disdain in his eyes. Even without you Jinghe kingdom, we can still conquer the Holy Dynasty. He was still very confident, after all. The military advisor clearly stated in the battle report that the soldiers of the Holy Dynasty were soldiers. Facing their constant harassment, morale plummeted, and as long as the snow melted, they could send troops to attack Wanmen Gate. As long as they win the Wanmen Gate, Fujing City, which is not far from the Wanmen Gate, will be theirs. Fujing City is theirs, so will other cities be far away? Since the entire Holy Dynasty is theirs, why should they share a piece of the pie with others? Is it too much? The strength of the Holy Dynasty is not as weak as it appears on the surface. Your Majesty, you should consider it carefully. The envoy of the Jinghe kingdom was sincere and kind. No need. The king of the nomadic dynasty didn't have the patience to listen to him at all. And with an impatient expression, he immediately ordered the expulsion. You better go. Several envoys of the Jinghe kingdom glanced at each other and saw that the other party had made up their minds, so they had no choice but to leave. Reluctantly got up and left. A few envoys from the Jinghe kingdom had not yet left the capital of the nomadic dynasty, when a hurried woo woo horn sounded suddenly in front of them, causing several people to be stunned. Listening to the sound of the horn sounds like an enemy attacking. Shen Kun's expression was solemn. I don't know who was so bold and dared to take the initiative to attack the nomadic dynasty with more than 100,000 cavalries? Wouldn't it be the Wangyu dynasty calling? Another messenger asked. Now those who dare to fight indiscriminately can't really find any other country except the Wangyu dynasty. It shouldn't be. The nomadic dynasty is too far away from the Wangyu dynasty. And there is a Holy Dynasty in the middle. They should not bypass the Holy Dynasty and attack the nomadic dynasty. Shen Kun shook his head. Even if the Wangyu dynasty wanted to fight, they would only fight the Holy Dynasty. Yes, even if the Wangyu dynasty wants to attack the nomadic dynasty, it should attack the Holy Dynasty first. One of them echoed. Is it possible that the Ri Yao dynasty came over? Ri Yao dynasty and the Holy Dynasty have always been allies. If the Holy Dynasty is defeated, then the Ri Yao dynasty will not escape the fate of being destroyed. Therefore, it is very likely that the Sunyear dynasty is coming over to help the Holy Dynasty attack the nomadic dynasty. Don't worry about who is calling. Let's run away. Don't wait for this unwarranted disaster. Shen Kun saw the people of the nomadic dynasty fleeing everywhere. He hurriedly ran towards his horse, so as to escape the right and wrong place. The other messengers did not dare to delay any longer, and hurriedly followed behind him. They ran out of the capital of the nomadic dynasty on horseback, and turned their heads to see more than 100,000 cavalry soldiers in the distance. The rumbling sound of hooves was like a roaring thunder, which shook the heart and made people panic. Shen Kun looked in awe when he saw so many cavalrymen. He swallowed hard and said in a trembling voice, How could there be so many cavalries? He roughly estimated the number of cavalries in this battle. At least 200,000 cavalries. 200,000 cavalries. Which country can form so many cavalries? The messenger behind him saw that the cavalries were divided into 3 groups and planned to outflank the nomadic dynasty. He shouted out in fright, Flee! Escape! Escape! Death! He didn't wait for his companion to react, waving the whip in his hand and slapped the horse's ass. The horse was in pain, raised its hooves and ran into the distance. Several other messengers also responded, urging the horses to run into the distance. After they ran to an absolute safe distance, they dared to look back. At this time, the rear had evolved into a one-sided massacre, and I saw the cavalry of the Holy Dynasty holding bows and arrows and shooting ruthlessly at the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty. The rain of arrows in the sky made the scalp numb, and the nomadic cavalry at the forefront was shot down by the ruthless arrow rain, and then was trampled into mud by the hooves of the horses that rushed up behind. The distance between the two sides has also increased due to the time of these waves of arrows. Seeing that the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty was about to fight at close range, Shen Kun shook his head. Don't look at the number of opponents. But fighting at close range with the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty is an act of courting death. Sir Shen is right. The whole continent knows how strong the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty is in melee combat. The other party's approach to the nomadic dynasty's cavalry is completely an act of courting death. The messenger on the side nodded again and again, agreeing with Shen Kun's concept. However, the next moment, the slap in the face struck. When the cavalry of the two sides fought, the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty was rapidly consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye. And there were more than 100,000 cavalries in an instant. They did not expect the death toll to reach such a high level. Hey, it's amazing, Shen Kun gasped. If he played this way, the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty would not be enough to kill the opponent's cavalry. It was also the first time that the cavalry of the nomadic dynasty encountered such a strong opponent. As soon as they fought, so many companions died, and a trace of panic rose in their hearts, especially when they saw that the cavalry of the Holy Dynasty was like a god of killing. And their hearts were invaded by fear, and lost the courage to fight. Hey! Feather arrows flew from the enemy's direction from time to time and hit their comrades. So frightened, the timid cavalry greeted the horse and turned around and fled. As soon as one person fled, more people fled, and in an instant, countless cavalrymen of the nomadic dynasty turned their heads and fled. Mo Yan had already expected that the other party would flee in all directions. So from the beginning he divided his troops into 3 groups and attacked the nomadic dynasty with a flanking trend. At this moment, the nomadic dynasty cavalry who fled to the periphery rushed out and happened to bump into the Holy Dynasty cavalry who came up. Before they had time to wield their weapons to fight back, a wave of arrows came flying, and thousands of people fell in an instant. Some of them ran to the back of the capital, but the Holy Dynasty cavalry behind them were like gangrenous bones, and they couldn't get rid of them. Moreover, under the rush of the horses, they could draw bows and arrows and shoot at them accurately. They had never seen the ability to shoot arrows under the rush of horses, and they were so frightened by the other side that they had no other idea but to run for their lives. Although some people have noticed the saddle of the Holy Dynasty, but at this moment, they are not in the mood to study how important the saddle played in this war. Originally more than 100,000 cavalry's men were attacked by the Holy Dynasty, and most of them were killed or injured. Only more than 40,000 cavalry's men were surrounded by the Holy Dynasty and were forced to surrender. The king of the nomadic dynasty, who had been living in the yurt, learned that his side was defeated, and he was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of old blood. "Your Majesty!" The courtiers below saw their Majesty spitting blood. All stood up and looked at their Majesty nervously. At this moment, Mo Yan led the team and rushed into the camp. He looked at the king with blood stains on his mouth, picked up the Longchen sword in his hand, and cut off the opponent's head mercilessly, scaring the surrounding princes and ministers into chills, shivering against the yurt. As long as they are close relatives of the nomadic king, they will all be executed. Mo Yan ruthlessly instructed the soldiers behind him. Here, the soldiers behind Mo Yan looked at the ministers in the yurt, so frightened that the princes and ministers in the yurt knelt on the ground and shivered. In order to save their own lives, some ministers voluntarily came forward to introduce who the king's close relatives were to the soldiers of the Holy Dynasty. For a time, there was a scream from time to time in the most central yurt, frightening the people around, for fear that the people of the Holy Dynasty would massacre the city. The people of the nomadic dynasty who had been noisy and planned to escape even accelerated their escape speed, just wanting to escape from the right and wrong places as soon as possible. Mo Yan didn't care about the escaped residents. As long as he controlled the remaining nomadic cavalry, those little shrimps wouldn't be able to make a splash. And now that the nomadic dynasty is gone, even if these people escape, they will come back soon. After all, their food is still in their hands. General, we have found the grain depot. It is really full of meat. Lieutenant General Lu, who went to the nomadic dynasty's grain depot, ran back and said excitedly. When he grew up so big, he didn't see so much meat. It was like a few mountains. Let him eat it alone. I'm afraid he won't be able to finish it in a few lifetimes. Mo Yan couldn't be happy, seeing that the weather was getting warmer. So much meat would rot before he could eat it. But this is not something he worries about. He has to worry about letting the emperor worry about it. He is only responsible for winning the battle, and then returning to the holy city to participate in the celebration banquet. Maybe he will meet the person he misses. Knowing that the Holy Dynasty attacked the capital of the nomadic dynasty within a day, all the emperors of all countries had a ghostly expression. The emperor of Jinghe Kingdom learned that the Holy Dynasty not only won the victory, but also captured the capital of the nomadic dynasty. For a time, he wondered if he had hallucinations in his ears, otherwise why would he hear such untrue news? Especially when he heard that the Holy Dynasty had captured the capital of the nomadic dynasty in less than a day, his heart trembled with fear. Because he was afraid that the Holy Dynasty would immediately attack their Jinghe kingdom. On the same day, he immediately formed a group of messengers and sent them to the Holy Dynasty to express their apologies, and said that they would definitely find the missing Prince Junhua from their territory and build peace between the two countries. Just when all the countries were trembling with fright at the strength of the Holy Dynasty, the emperor of the Wangyu dynasty knew why the Holy Dynasty won, and immediately asked the Ministry of Industry to work overtime to make the saddles. Since the saddle does not have any technical content, the Ministry of Industry of the Wangyu dynasty picked up the saddles that were left on the battlefield and began to make a large number of saddles. When Jun Yi learned that the nomadic dynasty had been captured within a day, the whole person was a little confused, feeling that everything was so unreal. You know, their Holy Dynasty and the nomadic dynasty have been entangled for hundreds of years, and no one can cure the other, but they did not expect the nomadic dynasty to be captured when he was in power.